Madayaw and Shalom, everyone. Let's do a recap of what I said last night because we're doing part two of David. So, David is a very complicated character, but God loves this guy, and we will explore why. So, he is from the line of Judah, the fourth son of Leah. Judah did not get the lion's share or the birthright. Okay, so the eldest Reuben became disinherited because he slept with his stepmom, and well, Israel was not happy with that, or Yaakov was not happy with that. So the lion's share of the birthright actually went to Joseph, because Manasseh, his son, gets two portions of land, and Ephraim gets one portion. So, in essence, he gets three portion. Only because Levite also doesn't get a land portion because the Levites were assigned as priests, and it's actually a very important role. So they might not have land, but they have a very, very big role, and it will come into play, especially when David becomes king. So, David is a shepherd, and as I said, shepherds aren't what we think of shepherds today. Shepherds were usually family members, and they did have a team with them. See, Jacob's sons were teams. That's why they were able to overpower Joseph. David, being one of the youngest, or he is, I think, the youngest, was assigned some minders, and you will see it there in Samuel. He had minders, okay, so he has assistants under him. But his father trusts this little old boy. I would think he was a boy of, I don't know, between 15 to 19 years old. So he was relatively young, but he was already relatively skilled because he told Saul that he was able to kill a lion, a wolf, and something. He was able to defend his sheep. So when he heard sorry, when he heard Goliath dissing God, he's like, "Who's that uncircumcised Philistine? I'm gonna take him down as I took down that lion, as I took down that wolf." Nobody would believe him, of course, but by this point, I don't know. Saul's checked out. Fast forward, David falls Goliath, takes his sword, chops off the head. All right, what happens next? So Saul's like, "Whose son are you?" If David says, "I am yours, your majesty," the credit goes to the line of Benjamin. But I don't know, for some reason, maybe David didn't get that or he didn't understand what Saul was trying to imply. He said, "I am the son of Jesse. I'm from the tribe of Judah." So Saul, maybe he knows about prophecy. I don't know. Anyways, Saul is plagued by an evil spirit, and only David can soothe it with his harp. He becomes friends with Jonathan, and for some reason, Saul starts going cray cray and wants to kill him. And so David flees. By this time, David already conquered a lot of lands for Israel. And that's not helping because Saul's like, "How come everyone loves him? And even my conquest and my son's conquest are nothing to the eyes of the people." He tried to get David to marry his first one daughter, and then he changed his mind. He took that daughter back and gave it to somebody else and married David to another daughter, and same thing happens, and then he wants to kill David, and David had many opportunities to kill Saul. He doesn't do that. When Saul and his sons died in battle, David is crowned. All right. Now, tricky part. So David takes back Michal, the daughter who was supposed to be his, Saul's daughter, was supposed to be his wife. So she is technically the first wife. She's not very nice, and God closes her womb, so there is no child born to Michal. Okay, so in the ancient world, children were everything. So God's punishment to Michal was really, why? Because Michal is like, "What are you doing? Half naked dancing on the street?" Because, David was electrified because the ark was coming back to Jerusalem. He was so on fire that he tore his robes and he started dancing and singing and playing instrument, because remember, David is a musician. To pass the time while taking care of the sheep, he composed songs, he played his harp, And yeah, he is known for playing the harp. But anyways, Michal didn't like that. She had a different idea of what a king is, but David's like, no, this is for God. I'm dancing for joy and stuff. And well, there. God got angry because, when you do something for God and people persecute you for it, God would love the persecuted over you. So, anyways, then you have Ahinoam, which is he met her along the way while he was fleeing, and then Abigail as well. She was somebody who really welcomed David in her camp, and then when she got widowed, David said, I'll take you in as one of my wives. So he had a lot of wives. He has Maacah, Haggith, Abital, Eglah, and then Bathsheba. Bathsheba, the infamous one. So nobody really knows if Bathsheba was 100% with this or she just can't say no because by that time David is king. Anyways, Nathan, the prophet, chastises David for this. And the consequence was you're going to lose the son that you have with Bathsheba because she is somebody else's wife and you bedded her. So God's like, I'm going to take that baby. And David fasts for days, tore his clothes, said sorry, but God's like, you need to learn consequence. So the baby dies, and then after that, he washes himself and puts on his kingly robe, and people are like, shouldn't you mourn? And he's like, I've mourned before the baby was going to die. I know it's my fault. But anyways, they had another son, Solomon, and he promised Solomon would be king. I don't know when he promised that. It doesn't say that. It only said what towards the end of his life when two of his sons kind of ish rebelled. But anyways, his favorite son is Absalom, because it says there Absalom was very handsome, maybe looks like him, something. But anyways, Absalom is handsome, but Absalom's sister got us aid by another of the sons of David, and David didn't do anything. So Absalom took it on his hands to murder that brother, and he didn't do anything because, well, he kind of likes Absalom. As I said, David is a complicated person, and he won a lot of wars, but God told him, your hands are soaked in blood, therefore you cannot build my temple. But isn't that God's plan to make sure David is a conqueror? And yet he tells David, nope, can't build my temple because bloody hands. Yes. Unfortunately, that's, yeah. Anyways, as I said, complicated. But one thing is, the reason why David is a man after God's own heart is because David never became an idolater. Sadly, even Solomon at one point in his life became an idolater, and his sons after him, same banana. Yes, they some of them became good, they repented, but the Asherah poles were still there. For David, nope, he will break down Baal's altar and stuff. So those who break those altars, those who tear down the Asherah poles, God actually loves them. Example, Jehoshaphat, Hezekiah, those were the people who broke down the walls. Even Manasseh, King Manasseh, who sacrificed his son to Chemosh. In the end, he repented, but not to say there weren't any consequences. Same thing with David. He had this weird tug of war with his son Absalom, but at the same time they want to kill him, but at the same time he slave drives his servants, at the same time, well, a lot of things. He is not the perfect man. But why did God choose him? If you notice in the Bible, God never chooses anybody perfect. He always chooses the harlot, the flawed guy, the guy who hides, the coward, the murderer. He chooses the flawed people. Why? Because of grace. Why did he choose David? Why is David his favorite? Because David never went into idolatry. That is the reason why he absolutely loves David. So that should be a good reason for us. We are sinners, but we must never, ever, ever turn to idolatry. I thought I wasn't an idolater, but there are practices out there that are, so you better watch out for those.